Brian, can you put it into words and in slow motion what the guys must do in wheeling, from the guy who starts from the beginning to the pro wheelie? If you can explain.
Well, you know, the biggest thing, the bottom line with the wheelie is that you want to get it onto balance point. So, in other words, just before the front wheel falls down and just before it goes over and you land on your back. So, to get it onto that balance point is the most difficult part, because it's incredibly difficult to have the throttle control and the clutch control. And of course, if it does go too far, you need to be ready to pull the clutch, hit the back brake and decelerate at exactly the same time. So that all takes years and years of experience and training to be able to do that. But like anything, it's like practice. Right. So the best thing to do, the way I learned, and I often teach people this, is to find a little bit of a gradient, an uphill, and then instead of having to worry about clutch, brake, or clutch, accelerator and back brake, leave the back brake out of it. You've already got so much, you know, on the line with your clutch and your accelerator, that we're going to use our feet dangling on the ground to act as the back brake, just to get the feel of where the balance point needs to be. So what we're going to do is we're going to put it in first gear, we're going to find a bit of an uphill, and then we're going to let the clutch out, and we're going to go past balance point, and the bike's actually going to flip out backwards. Once it flips out backwards, our feet are going to be on the ground to protect us from falling over backwards. Right. Then what we're going to do is with our feet, that's going to act as our back brake, and the front wheel will come down again. And instead of the front wheel touching the ground, we're going to hit a bit of gas again. And once we hit the gas again, the back wheel, the front wheel will come up, and the back, you know, it'll stay on the back wheel, and then we're going to control that on the accelerator. Now that's going to take a bit of time to get the clutch, accelerator used to it. Once we've done that, obviously, once we're skilled more, we're going to now put one of our feet up onto the back brake on the right foot peg and act as a back brake now, but the left leg will still be there in case you miss the back brake.
Okay.
And what we're going to do once we've got that dialed, and you know, you're going to go up and down the street or wherever you're doing it, don't do it on the street, but you're going to do it up and down wherever you find an uphill until you've got that perfect feeling of where the balance point is, and once you're used to the back brake. And once you've of course got the back brake dialed, then you're going to put your other foot on, and then you dial, then you're going to be on that balance point. But the idea is not to run on the brake the whole time. The idea is to keep it on balance point using the clutch and the accelerator, and only if you have a problem you hit the back brake.
Now, time frame. Everyone's thinking they're going to look at this and do it in 2 or 3 weeks. This actually takes years, doesn't it?
Well, to perfect the wheelie on any surface takes years, but to get the throttle control and the clutch control 100% can take you one afternoon. You know, I learned it when I was 12 years old, and I got it in one afternoon. Okay, I used a trials bike, so the seat was a little lower. So, you know, if you have access to a trials bike, I would use that, or even take the seat off the motorbike, because then it's lower, or use a smaller type bike. And you know, you guys have got access to all of those kind of bikes, but you know, a lower bike will definitely give you a lot more room for your feet to touch the ground. Yes. On these particular bikes, you're quite high off the ground, so it's a little bit difficult to touch the ground. But you know, once you've got that accelerator, clutch control, back brake dialed, you can start doing circle wheelies, and you can start playing around
controlling
with it. It does. It's like anything. It's time in the saddle, years and years of training to really perfect it. But to get the action on the accelerator right, you could probably do it in a day or two.
It's actually quite quick. In honesty, how many times have you fallen doing it?
Well, you know, the way that I've explained it now, I never fell off once, because it's such a controlled way of doing it, and nothing really can go wrong unless you really get throttle happy and you whiskey throttle the bike and roots out. Yeah. That can happen, of course, but if you do it controlled in a controlled environment, and especially using a smaller type, maybe a 4-stroke bike, you know,
230 type of thing,
that type of bike that doesn't have a power band, you can't go wrong, you know. So yes, you can loop it out when you start getting clever, and you know, nobody wants to drag their feet down the road when they're showing their mates how to wheelie.
Yeah.
But you know, once you get further down the line and you're starting off, you know, with the wheelie with your feet on the pegs, you can maybe take a handful too much and loop the bike out. So that can happen, but touch wood, I've never looped it out and you know, made a fool of myself.
We've done the stoppie before, and now we're going to do the stoppie demystified. That's not going through it when there's mist, but it's showing you how to actually do it. There's been a lot of commentary on how do you actually do it properly and what is the exact procedure to do it. Once again, Brian's the best at it. We're going to ask him what he did first to learn how to do it without hurting himself badly, and what's the procedure. Brian, if you don't mind telling us how.
Well, you know, this is really the opposite to the wheelie. You know, there's no way of doing it safely, you know. So the bottom line again is you want to get it onto that balance point, but to find that balance point, there's no safety catcher. So, you know, too much is over the handlebars, too little, nothing's going to happen. It's just the back wheel won't come up high enough. So really with this one, it's going to take a lot more time. It's a lot more tedious. So what you want to do is you want to build up a little bit of speed. You want to squeeze the front brake, but at the same time you want to put the weight on the front wheel and take the weight off the foot pegs. So you want to put as much weight onto the front wheel as possible, and the best way to do this is actually on tar or on really grippy grass, if there is such a thing. And what you want to do is you want to just do a little stoppie. So do it real slow and just get the back wheel up, just so that you get the feeling of going up on the front wheel. Once you've done that, then you can start going a little bit faster and you can do longer ones. But the moral of the story is you want to get it up on that balance point where it's just before it goes over, and obviously not too little where it doesn't go up at all. So you know, once again, it's lots of practice, lots of time, but it's very, very smooth on the brake. Don't yank the front brake, and you know, you can't just grab the front brake. You need to take your weight off the foot pegs, number one. You also need to push the front wheel into the ground, and the way that we do that, it's all one movement. So it goes from a little bit of speed, so accelerate first, second gear, squeeze the front brakes, but as you squeeze it, push the suspension down and take the weight off the foot pegs. Right. And when I show you now, you'll see what I mean by that.
Trick question, how many times did you fall getting this right?
Again, I was really lucky. I started really, really slowly. I did little ones, and the first time that I ever really went over the handlebars was in front of about 5,000 people in the Nassau Coliseum in New York, where you know, I was just practicing before the show, and I just got excited and grabbed too much front brake and got spat straight over the handlebars. So, you know, it does happen. And then you know, I've also had I've had a pretty big one on a motocross bike, you know, just grabbing too much front brake. So it is a dangerous move. But again, if you just start off slowly and you just do little ones, you know, you can build it up, and eventually you can do fifth gear wide open stoppies, you know.
Excellent. And remember, if you get the stoppie wrong, it will be the end, oh.
Alright guys, there's been a lot of discrepancy between unweighting a motorcycle, and coming from the trial side, it's not just a trials move. Alright, the way that enduros are going nowadays, extreme enduros, enduro crosses, you guys have to learn how to unweight the motorcycle. Alright, first tip is you've got to be able to jump up on top of the ledge. Okay guys, when you go for the obstacle, remember, it's what you put in is what you get out. So the way we like to teach it first is you can stand in front of the obstacle without the motorcycle, and if you compress your knees, you got to be able to jump up the obstacle. So obviously the lower you go and the harder you kick, the more height you're going to get. So let's try that. You've got to compress down, jump, and don't forget that you've got to jump forward to bring the motorcycle with you. Okay, so it's compress, jump, up and forward. Okay, that's the first end. If you're not using any legs, you're not going to get any height. And if you're not jumping forward, you're going to be dragging the bike back down. So now what we're going to do now is we're going to get Brent just to show you that move on the enduro bike. Okay, so we saw Brent put a lot of effort in, and you could see that back wheel jumping right to the top of the tire. Now he's going to show you a demonstration of not using his legs. Watch how little effort goes, and he's going to really make that bike work overtime. Okay, so we can see from the two examples there that the second one, where he didn't put a lot of effort in to jump up the obstacle, you can see the back tire impacts really hard, leaves the tire, lands back on, and he's a little bit out of shape on top. Now, you've got to picture this as, say now it's a mossy outcropping. You're going to be sliding all over the place. So remember, the more you put in, the more you get out. And don't forget that even that second example we showed you works on this type of obstacle, but later on we're going to go to a bigger obstacle and you'll see that you get stuck. Okay, so now we've seen the technique on a small obstacle, and remember what I said, that you will get away with bad technique on a smaller obstacle. Now we're going to bring it into a much more extreme obstacle. So Brent's going to do the typical enduro style, pick up the front wheel, try and get the skid plate on top and then push it over. Let's see how much work that is. Okay, so we've brought the technique onto a bigger obstacle and Brent's shown you the normal enduro technique. Now remember what I told you right in the beginning. What you put in is what you get out. So now it's a bigger obstacle, I'm going to have to compress more, and jump forward. So let's see how it goes. You can see that I have to put a lot more effort in to get up. So if I just ride up here normally with not a lot of legs, the previous technique that Brent showed you, that's what's going to happen. So what we're going to show now is Brent doing the proper unweighting technique on a big obstacle. Okay, so now we've seen the proper de-weighting to get that back wheel to the top of the obstacle. And what we're going to do now is we're going to break it down just quickly for you guys so you know exactly how to do it and practice it. Alright, you'll see Brent coming in, he compresses, he picks up the wheel from about the height of the obstacle, lay it on the ground, that's where the front wheel leaves. And a very important part about where that front wheel impacts is just on top. So you need to hit the surface of it so you can get good compression. That drives the motorcycle in, compresses both back and rear suspension, and he comes in. What happens then? Everything rebounds. He stalls a little bit in the clutch. You'll see him drop it. At the same time he jumps forward and he jumps up and accelerates off the obstacle.
Pipeline riding. Now, pipeline used in endurocross, or you might even come across it in your ride. Especially a pipeline like this, very slippery. There's a right procedure and a wrong procedure, right way and a wrong way. Once again, Brian incorporates a lot of his trials riding in it, and most of the top endurocross guys are trials riders nonetheless. Brian, what are your hints of doing pipeline, and especially a smooth surface like that, in sequence?
You know, the biggest thing with logs or pipelines or anything in that arena is that most guys don't commit to it. You know, they come up to it half-heartedly, so that's the first problem, is they don't commit. The second thing that they do is they wheelie into it. So you know, if the pipeline's like this, they'll wheelie the front wheel way too high, and that just hits the bash plate into it, and you can get over it. I mean, a lot of riders do get over obstacles like that, but it's not the correct way. The correct way is to try and punch the front wheel into about halfway to 3/4 of the pipeline or the obstacle, and once you hit it, is to pop the back wheel into it, and that'll get you over a lot smoother than just bashing the bottom of the bike into it. So yes, the bottom line is you've got to hit the front wheel into the actual pipe, and of course commit 100%.
Perfect. Now, when you're using speed, do you still use the trials technique by punching and jumping, or is that too slow a technique to use for an endurocross?
You know, that's debatable. You know, a lot of the top guys are just doing anything to get over it, and a lot of them are sometimes faster, but you know, it's dodgy. You know, it's like calling all pockets in snooker when you just hit a ball and it goes anywhere. This the correct way is to punch it into the, you know, and when I say to go faster, that doesn't necessarily hit it faster, it just means commit more.
Yes.
So when you hit it 100%. Don't come up to it and then gas it at the last minute. So definitely the procedure still stays the same, you know, punch the front wheel into it, and that'll bring the back wheel over a lot better. And then of course your body positioning is very important as well. But you know, that's all one move. You know, you can't think about it, you know, okay, punch the front wheel, move my body back, move it forward. That's one move, and that just again comes from practice. But the biggest thing that you've got to try and remember is to ride the front wheel into the actual obstacle about halfway to 3/4 of the way up, so that it actually brings the whole bike up and over, and instead of bashing the bottom of the bash plate or the bottom of the bike, the back wheel actually traverses over the obstacle.
Now, in that sequence, just as a quick thing, where does your body go? Does it go to the front? Do you like push your weight forward when you go over it, or to the back?
Well, you would think that your body weight would probably lean back, because you want to get as much weight onto the back wheel as possible, because if you can, you want to try and keep the front wheel in the air once you get over the other side. Now, there's nothing wrong with dropping the front wheel, but you never know how high it is on the other side. When it's not too high on the going up side, you want to try and lean back so that you get as much traction on the back wheel as possible.
Yes.
So I would say that your body weight would start in the middle, like anything, if you're jumping a motocross jump or any obstacle for that matter. But from the time you've punched the actual obstacle, you want to lean back so you can get as much traction on the back wheel as possible.
Basically, to keep it high. So if the front back wheel hits you, it must stay high. Is that correct?
Try and keep it, if not high, otherwise level. Yes. You know, but you don't want the front wheel to
dip
drop.
in. Okay.
Exactly. Yeah.
Perfect. Well, Brian's going to show us the way to do it, the wrong way, and then the right way. Once again, it's more efficient doing it the right way, and you'll see the energy that you exert doing it the wrong way. Another obstacle, Brian, that is in the arsenal of the Enduro Cross rider is tires and tire crossing in succession. In front of us we have these 3 tractor tires. We have called them bulldozer tires before, and we've got lamb-based. So these are tractor tires. Now there's a specific way of doing it without creating a groove, as you will see, and there's an art to it. Brian, tell us the sequences that you would go through to overcome these obstacles.
You know, this particular sequence is a little bit difficult because there's a gap between the 2 tires. So what you want to do is, most tractor tires are just the right length, the wheelbase of a bike.
Yeah.
So again, you want to punch the front wheel just onto the top, you know, near the top of the tire.
Yeah.
And then you want to lean back and let the front wheel stay as light as possible to traverse across the top of the tires. On these particular ones, it's a little bit difficult because there's a gap. But again, what you want to do is you want to punch the front, the first one, and once you've done that, you want to try and keep the front as light as possible and get the grip on the actual tires, not in between the tires. So, you know, again, it's lots of practice, lots of technique, and but the biggest thing is to keep the front wheel as light as possible across the tops of it.
100%. And you must say that you've got to give full commitment in this.
Exactly.
If you back off, especially on a tire like this, it's got a hole in it, it's not covered in the middle. Yeah. So your front wheel will duck and you go over the bar. So commitment 100%.
Absolutely. Like anything, you know, it's like anything. Any obstacle that you're going to do, you need to commit, but especially on a tire, because when you go in between a tire, you know, in between the center of the tires, you just stop dead.
Yeah.
And you know, it's definitely not the most pleasant feeling. You know, you're coming to a dead stop, and you know, you've got hand guards and your hands can go inside there and stuff. So you definitely want to commit 100% to it. And again, always look one tire ahead. You know, so look at the tire that you're going to hit, And as you're about to punch it, look at the next one, look at the next one, look at the next one. So always you're looking one step ahead of where you're actually riding.
100%. So watch this, learn by it, because if you don't get it right, you're going to have to retire. The seat bounce. Now, we have spoken about the seat bounce before and its relevance in off-road riding. Now, it's explained this time. Once again, we want to show you exactly how it's done, step for step. We've noted a lot of people have said, how is it done? Now, Brian, can you put it in a simple way or simple form? First of all, the advantages of seat bounce and the steps coming up to it and how to do it properly.
Yeah, you know, the biggest thing for me with a seat bounce is when you're coming out of a tight corner and you've got to try and jump across a gap or you need to clear some obstacle. And that's the real time that I see value in it, you know. So that's when you don't have much space to get a proper run up like a motocross jump. In other words, you don't have time to stand in the correct position. So you're using a system where the bike is able to give you leverage to jump over a particular obstacle or a gap or a log or something like that. So what we're trying to do is really accelerate hard, hitting the face of the jump or whatever we're hitting, and letting the back suspension, you know, really driving your weight into the back suspension. So
Compress.
So we're compressing it so that the bike can actually propel itself and launch out a lot more than you would be if you were standing. You know?
100%. Now, you would definitely, well, I find in my riding, I get more height out of a seat bounce than I do in a standing with them. Is that because you're preloading the actual shock absorber properly?
Yeah, you know, I think it's definitely the combination of you're pushing all your weight into the suspension, you're preloading the suspension, and at exactly the same time you're hitting the gas really hard, and it absolutely propels the bike, you know, off the launching ramp or whatever you're launching off. So it's you know, it really gives you a lot more lift and a lot more height than you would normally get if you were just standing.
100%. Now, my feeling on this is a lot of guys are scared to do it the first time or a couple of times because they think that the bike is going to hit them in the bum and throw them over the handlebars. That's a natural feeling. You know, in other words, they're not synchronized with the bike. How did you start doing a seat bounce, and how did you get that right in the beginning?
Well, like anything, you know, every time we talk about these things on the program, it's about practice, you know. So certainly don't go and try and jump the biggest canyon jump you can find.
Yeah.
You know, start small, just find a little mound or a little jump, and just start progressively and jump more and more and more. But the biggest thing is just to get your confidence up, and the way you can do that is to practice a lot, you know. So, you know, really come up to the jump and try and keep your body in a central position. So once you hit the jump, obviously you're going to be leaning back a little bit to get the weight on the back wheel. But once you take off, pull your body forward into the neutral position, because you always want to be neutral when you're jumping in the air.
Okay.
And that's really the best way to practice, is just to do it in small steps.
Now when you're coming up to, even say like a face, like we're going to be showing now, the face of a little jump or the face of a trench, do you clutch it just before you hit that jump? That's vitally important, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. You know, I don't normally suggest that, because every time you pull the clutch and you're losing drive. So you want to try and leave the clutch as much as possible, but have your finger on it for in case. But in a situation like we're going to explain just now, you know, when you're coming into a very tight corner and you need to accelerate really high or really hard, and you need the revs up, and to really get that blip, to get it up in the air, you're going to need to clutch it a little bit. So obviously you need to read the terrain. So if it's very muddy or very slippery, obviously that's not going to work for you. But you know, you'll know the conditions of the day, and for sure you want to give it a little bit of a clutch, give it a bit more juice,
more power,
and just propel and shoot it off the actual lip.
100%. Well, this actually works a lot for me when I ride. I use a lot of the seat bounce. Brian and I were talking earlier. Even just practicing riding in the veld, and I see a little bit of a mound or an ant mound, I just hit that and get used to it, so that when I come up to stuff, I use it in my riding a lot. What are the downsides of the seat jump?
You know, the downside to me in a seat jump is that you're sitting down. You know, and to me, you've got no control when you're sitting down. You know, you want to be standing and you want to be in control of the bike. So whenever you're standing on top of the bike, you're in control of the bike. When you sit in the bike is in control of you. So you're going along for the ride. But in a situation like this, we're actually using it to our advantage. So I wouldn't say that there's a downside to it, except for the fact that you're not quite as much in control as you would be had you been standing. But in a situation like we're going to explain now, you know, you would typically always want to hit you want to hit a jump like this straight.
Yes.
But in a situation like this, we don't have as much space as we would have had. So
it's off camber, yeah.
You know, we're dealing with what we've got at the time. You know, the course or the track, and on this particular situation, does turn very sharp right, and then we do have to jump a trench. So, you know, we're using it to our advantage. In the perfect world, we would have gone much wider and gone a much straighter line, stood up before the jump, stood in a central position, you know, hit the jump on the gas and jumped across the ditch. But, you know, there's not always the perfect world in racing and in riding in the bush.
Perfect. All right, so we're going to go through it step for step. Watch carefully his body positioning, and I also think, well, in this specific instance, the clutch work. All right, Brian.
I really enjoy this seat mounts. One of my favorite moves. It looks so graceful, and it just looks like you've got that motorbike in control. Now, when you see Brian coming up to this corner, what we haven't really spoke about is, did you see that? His finger was on the clutch. And we had spoken about it earlier, but it almost gives him that little bit of an explosive shoot out right there. And his body will lift, and now, as you can see there, his legs extend to give it an extra bit of height. So you're going up to there, clutch just touched, an accelerator, almost a whoop type of maneuver, and I love it.
The pivot. Now, once again, we've done the series on the pivot, but hence we have to now explain how it's done. Once again, the guys want to know step for step how it's done, the right technique on doing it, because it is a technique, it's a good technique. Brian, if you can explain to us, first of all, how does it help you in your riding, and then step for step how you actually do it.
You know, I see so many guys waste so much energy on, you know, trying to turn their bike around. So in a typical situation like we've got over here, you know, what would typically happen is a guy would get up to a situation where he didn't get enough momentum, or he didn't get up the obstacle, and he would get off the bike, pick it up, move it around, get around. What a waste of energy, honestly. And you know, the best thing about it is obviously energy saving. I mean, that's like all other videos that we've done, is we're trying to save energy.
Being efficient. Yes.
Being efficient. So, you know, the way that it helps is saving energy. It also allows you to maneuver the bike around in a much quicker time.
100%.
So, you know, it's an energy saver as well as a time saver.
Yeah. 100%. With that specific thing that Brian said, energy saving, exactly like it. If you use the bike's power and the actual geometry of the bike to turn it around, you can save, no matter how fit you are, you'll just save energy, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's on a trail. We've done a series before using Daryl Curtis on a path using it. There's so many things you can apply to. What we're going to do here now is it's an exaggerated pivot. You're not going to get this every time, but just to show you the actions on how it's done. So Brian, if you can give it to us step for step.
Now look at Brian's graceful maneuver here. You know, psychologically, someone sees you do a maneuver like that and they immediately think, man, this oak can ride. If we look carefully, you will see, just look carefully how he just lets the power and the actual clutch work in synergy. So the bike just gets onto the top of its obstacle and then blips itself over. There we are. If you saw the back tire there, you would see it is giving a little bit of acceleration. Oh, look at that. Threw up a little bit of a tuft. And it just makes it so easy. He's almost not really using any of his own strength.